doing a Q&A here. Anything is fair game. Just to be transparent, we're doing this because Alex has been advising me for the past few years, and he is basically shutting down his coaching in June. And so doing one last group of his Build Your Product course and everything there. So basically this is just kind of a final hurrah. Hopefully find some awesome people for that. And also just answer some questions and stuff there. So we had some people that couldn't make it that sent in questions that we'll get to. And then we're also open to any questions you guys have here on the call as well. But yeah, Alex, anything I missed or anything?
Yeah, and as you probably pick up, everyone that's on the call, like relatively informal and try to be as like clear and concise and honest as we can be with these answers. So if you ask something and you don't feel like it's answered, or if there's something that's unclear, please, continue to dig a little bit deeper. But as you probably see from Jake's content, he's very transparent with business results, things that he's learning, ups, downs, all that sort of stuff. And I'm a huge proponent of that. So excited to have you all here. And this will also be recorded. So there's going to be a few people that like couldn't make it and wanted to see it. So just so the folks on the call know, this is recording, and I don't think I'll share it publicly, but I will share it with people that ask for it or have RSVP'd to the call.
Yeah, sounds good. And do we want to just do we want to have people drop in chat to kind of prioritize our stuff here, or just kind of go casually with it? Or
I think we can kick off with these questions that Grant dropped in. I'll pop them into the Zoom chat so we've got something to work with here.
Yeah.
Oladapo, can you jump on mute, by the way? Here we go.
Cool. Yeah. Also, welcome, Dana. Yeah, so I think we can start with these. And if you guys want to drop questions in the chat, we'll jump in and start answering those and kind of work through all these as well. But we'll keep it casual.
Yeah. This first one, how do you determine the correct pricing points for your productized services? Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. So I'll share what I've done, and I guess how I approach it. And at least what I've done, and I think Alex, you've done this with a lot of others, but I guess my whole approach has been to not publish pricing out of the gate, especially not until like the offer is validated, and just to see if people are interested in the offer first. So if they're like rejecting your offer or if they're rejecting your price. And so with Lead Cookie, we've always kind of kept pricing off the site. Content Allies, we kept it off the site. We'd often make landing pages. But then I would just like duplicate that landing pages like multiple times and just kind of keep tweaking and testing out pricing. I know for like the first 6 months of Lead Cookie, I had like 4 versions of the pricing page that I was just kind of sharing differently with people. And until I kind of eventually dialed it in, and what I found was like a consistent thing. And even then, like we evolved it over the years and we eventually made it better. But that is, I guess, how I've done it. What I found really useful, and it just lets you kind of experiment and not be committed to something you're just putting out there, because it's definitely if I would have published what I originally charged for, Alex, I think I was charging like $499 a month, and then we got Lead Cookie up to like $1,500 a month. We've even got higher now. So like yeah, externally publishing those early prices would have probably not been good for me.
Yeah, totally. The couple things I'll add on that, my kind of rule of thumb is I try to figure out a way to charge as much as possible within reason. And I use pricing as a way to like drive up the quality of the product and the value of the product. So it's like this backwards thing where if you've got a price point of, I don't know, $99, and then you think, okay, if I want to charge 10 times the price, like what value do I need to deliver to support that? That's one framework that I use for pricing. And there's when we get on to the next question, I'll pull in there's an article by Jason Cohen, and I'm in the comments talking about John's productized service, which is live chat. And when he started that, he wanted to kick off at $99, and we worked together to figure out how to get him into the high hundreds, kind of low thousands range on that offer. And it was the same service. There was nothing that was really changing about the service or how it was delivered. It was more who it was pointed at, and then how he was anchoring the value that the customer would get back to their business results. So like when you have live chat, that's like, okay, that's a cool service. Or you have live chat and you're doing e-commerce and it increases the conversion rate, which generates that much extra revenue, which you can then put a price against. So those like pricing anchors I think are really useful. But yeah, my rule of thumb, try and charge as much as you possibly can, because hey, it takes pressure off elsewhere. All right,
Yeah, this pushed me to charge more a lot.
I'm always pushing that. This next question is totally for you, Jake. I'm like agencies. Ugh.
Yeah. So the next one, when it comes to agencies, what have you seen work best, standalone services or bundled packages? I'd say like the interesting thing that I guess I have seen, and so I feel like the productized service model that we end up talking about, and I guess a lot of people in this community go toward, is more of the standalone services. Like that's kind of what Lead Cookie is. That's more or less what Content Allies is. Like we do like, you know, the article writing. That's kind of like the one thing with like the LinkedIn. Content Allies, I guess, a little more toward the bundled, but Lead Cookie is just LinkedIn kind of thing. And we're actually slowly evolving that. But I guess where I've seen like the bundled packages, like that's kind of like almost like what John Logar, if you look at the stuff he teaches, like his entire thing is like go after a very niche vertical, build like a marketing system for that vertical and bundle all of that together and sell it. And I think that's a cool model, but it is, I think it's just a very different. I do see people go down that, and I think you can build a great business with that, but it's, I think it's a very different route to go down than building like one service and just doing that one service really, really well thing, which I think is what a lot of these models are. So I guess that'd be kind of like what I see. It's not saying it's a bad thing, but it's a very different thing, and it does require a lot more ops on the back end. So
I'm going to be controversial and say it's a bad thing. I have a pretty like pointed point of view on agencies and like the ambiguity they can throw into the mix if you're trying to do something scalable. Like some agencies can do it and some agencies can be super successful. There's a ton of them out there. But you're going to be putting in the effort anyway on your business. So I like something that's recurring. I like something that's scalable. I like something that is easy to like bolt people on to do if you're going down the productized service route. And oftentimes agencies make that difficult, where like your revenue will expand, but your cost base will expand linearly with that. And that becomes really frustrating because you're like, okay, I went from making 10K to making 50K and my net profit is like an extra 100 or 500 or $1,000. And it's like twice the amount of effort and twice the amount of pain. So Jake and I always go back and forth on agencies. It's a bit of a sore point for me, but yeah, I'll be controversial and like throw that out there.
yeah, and I get that. Like I will say, and you were right on this one. Like I tried to launch a podcasting service at Content Allies, and it just like was brutally painful. I tried to like bundle, and I think it's like doable, but I just think it's hard, especially for solo founders, and especially just early. Like I just think it's like I guess my mentality now is like, okay, that's still probably a good idea, but maybe once I'm at like 50, 60K a month, and then I want to like expand my revenue per customer. But like, there's actually something like Robin like posted in that productized group that I thought was interesting. He's like, a trend that they're seeing, that he saw in all of his interviews, was everyone gets to like 50, 60K with one service really, really well. And then they start to expand to other services to grow that value. And I was like, that's actually like a really interesting, like insightful trend that I think is worth looking at. So
interestingly, I see that as well, but often that expansion comes through churn catching up with growth. So there's these like step points where like you get to 10 grand, you get to like 40 or 50, and then like about around 80, it seems to be where people kind of level off as far as revenue growth goes, and something has to give, whether it's like start offering annual plans, expand, go up market, go into a different vertical, those kind of things. But yeah, the ones that I've seen, like they hit that, there's this like plateau and it's hard to get off. And there's a couple people, and I called this out in one of the emails that I'd sent before, where people will sit there, like they'll literally sit there for years and they'll be like, I could do this, could do that. And it's just spinning wheels, and it happens all the time. And that's sometimes a function of churn, especially in a recurring model. So throw that in for what it's worth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to take this next one, the lead
Yeah.
cookie and content analyze one?
So asked if I could start over with lead cookie and content allies, what would I do differently or better? And this is essentially was starting over with content allies. That's like, so I've done this. And I think the biggest thing that was really useful, I guess, on the second time around, which is why I'm actually like very glad I went through the Build Your Product program, just because like it forced me to really think through the business I was going to build and the model. Because like basically like the biggest regrets I have on lead cookie is like it's been great and it's awesome and we wrote a trend and I have built an awesome business and it's wonderful, but like it is volatile as hell. Dana knows this in here, like the lead gen industry, like we're just like getting thrashed around by cold email and like LinkedIn and like it's like Gmail and Microsoft and just like control our like the livelihood of our businesses. And I just like I kind of like knew that at the beginning. I like literally somewhere was like I like my like original planning document I wrote like, oh, LinkedIn could change as a platform and that could like disrupt us. And it's like, whatever, I'll figure that out down the line. And it's like that doesn't like figure itself out. Um, and so like years down the line, I'm still struggling with that. And I'm grateful like for the spot that it's got me to and the like abundance it's created and like the roadway that's like letting me like build content allies now. But when I think of what I actually want now, it's like I want a business that's going to last 20 years. Like I want something that like I can just build and then like I don't have to worry and I don't have to worry about like literally in the next few years like lead cookie just like getting massively disrupted, like GDPR and stuff like that, like all these things, like it's just really volatile. And so that was probably the biggest thing when I did start over with content allies that I really wanted to think through. And I like went through multiple iterations and like, what service do I want to build? Like what area do I want to focus on? And just really thinking through like that bigger picture, longer term, what I want instead of just, thinking 3 months down the line of how I'm going to basically make a living off of this thing. So that is probably the biggest thing that I would do differently. And I have done differently starting over with content allies. And then as I also said, I probably wouldn't have branched out and tried to start a second service line of content allies so quickly, as that was a mistake. So
The focus piece is great, man. This goes right into the question that I have, which is if I could start over again with WP Curve, what would I do differently or better? It would be focus. Like that was the thing that there's a big opportunity. There's something that's really like there to be taken. And we started 4 businesses in like 12 or 18 months, I think. We had a landing page builder. We had a content community, which Jake was a part of. Shout out to Content Club back in
that's how we met.
2014, which was like, it was all fun. Like, this is all fun stuff. We had a podcast that was just talking to entrepreneurs and not really directionally relevant to anything we were actually doing. And so if I could do WP Curve over again, or really any business that I do over again, I'm like try to be very focused, like as focused as I can be on the problem that I'm solving. Because what the pattern that I see as a coach, and I see this just rear its head again and again, is when things get difficult, people don't want to necessarily face and lean into the problem. They want to find a different problem to solve that they feel like is easier to solve. So it's kind of like, if you've got a lot of things to do, like you've got your taxes to do and you don't want to do your taxes. So you end up with a really clean car, a really clean house, your gutters get done, you're going back and reorganizing your bookshelf. Like you're doing all of these things around the work that actually needs to get done. And this happens all the time. And the way entrepreneurs do it is they just start new businesses. And that's what we did. We would like get some momentum and then it would just get kind of boring and then we go and start something new. It was fun. It was totally fun, but it definitely like cost us a lot of time and a lot of money as far as like the compounding of recurring revenue, because you just can't grow 4 things. I don't think, like, unless you're Elon Musk, I don't think you can grow like 3 or 4 things really well in parallel. Like, it's just not possible. Superhuman. Yeah, what do we got here? Coach Claff. Yeah, by the way, if anyone needs any clarification on any of these answers that we're giving, like jump in, chat, whatever. We'll get, this will be a bit more interactive once we get through these initial questions too. Coach Claff. From everyone you've coached so far, what are the top 1 to 3 recurring patterns, mistakes, limiting beliefs, et cetera, that you keep seeing over and over? So just name one: the distraction or the focus piece. That's for sure one. Second one is being able to have a big enough vision, or like asking for enough. So people will want to like get in the mix and start something, and they'll be like, okay, I want to have a business that does 20 grand a month or 40 grand a month. I was like, that's cool, but like it doesn't require you to really stretch yourself. Like if you come to me and you say, I want to net $500,000 a month or $1 million a month, then that requires a lot of, like, you have to really stretch yourself. And that's, as a coach, is super fun. So I actually see people setting like very conservative and comfortable goals. And I'm always on Jake about, like, if he sends me even in the email series that was going through, like that back and forth was between Jake and I. Like Jake had set out his goals and he wrote them well, but because I know what he's capable of, I'm like, dude, you can do a little bit more. You can do a little bit better. You can push it a little bit further. And that's kind of the job of a coach anyway. Like that's what I get paid to do, because I like to see people expand. Another pattern, recurring issue, limiting belief, mistake. I think the other thing that I see quite a lot is that people struggle to see themselves in the place they want to get to. And so, Jake, I know that you've probably come to terms with this now, but I know for quite a while, once you got to however much revenue you were doing with Lead Cookie, or you got to like working 5 hours a week or whatever else, there was kind of this like shock factor where you're like, holy shit, I'm here, I'm doing it. Look, I'm doing it. And you'd email me and you'd be like, dude, this is amazing. And I'm like, yeah, this is what you've been working for. And so at some level, there's this disconnect for entrepreneurs where they're like, this is what I want to get to. And it feels like very far out of reach. And then when they get there, it's hard for them to actually like really own it or revel in it or enjoy it. And usually it's because it's such a step change from their like existing lifestyle or what they've been used to for so many years before. And for me as a coach, that's also super rewarding, because when I get those emails and people like Bridget, right? Bridget is one of the people that was in the early Build Your Product. And she's like, I'm going to buy an Airstream. I'm going to buy a truck. I'm going to travel across America with my husband, and we're going to do this and do that. I'm like, great. Like, okay, like that's your goal. Like, I'm going to push you as hard as I can to get you there. And I think she just recently like bought the Airstream, and now she's like starting to do it. And so like she had some clear visibility of what that would be. Now, like when she gets out on the road and realizes that caravanning is not as like much fun as it's cracked up to be, that'll be a different thing. But like she still like had that clarity of vision to get herself there and is working towards it, making it really quite real. And sometimes people struggle with that. So yeah, do you have anything to add to that, Jake? Does any of that like land?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of thing around just like the limiting beliefs and like these stories. Like, I think one of the most interesting thing, and I see this like, it's just like, I don't know why, like you just like whenever, like one of the first things you said, like the first calls was like, okay, and like this has always stuck with me, but like assuming you're going to succeed, why are you doing this business? And it was like so weird to assume that I would like succeed. And because like you just get conditioned, I think, when you're out there solo doing it on your own, like you just get conditioned that like everything fails. Like I just tried so many things and they failed. Some of them were stupid ideas, but ultimately, like a lot of them probably would have worked. When I actually look back at some of the things I gave up on, I was like, oh no, like that would have worked. I was just like serving the wrong customer or something, like, but then I just threw in the towel on the whole concept. And that was just this interesting like revelation to realize, like, hey, if you're just like committed to making this work, and you just say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to get over whatever hurdles, and like that just becomes this huge thing. And I was just like, I don't know, like it was like the first 6 to 8 months, I was like, this is going to crumble any day, because like everything I've done before has crumbled. And like getting over that like mental story was like really difficult. And so, yeah, just like that limiting belief you have, I think is it's very real, and like you're kind of blind to them. And like till someone points it out, it's very hard to see those beliefs in yourself, I guess.
I don't know if the reference is Chicken Little, where Chicken Little runs around and thinks the sky's going to fall in. Like, I'm not really, maybe that's the right one, but that feeling that everything is going to collapse, so common. Like every entrepreneur I've ever coached has some variant of that. Um, and that's probably like intellectual honesty at some level as well, you know, like you're being realistic with what's possible, because in your business, you know, LinkedIn, something could change, something could happen, blah blah blah. Like it's easy to see how that could be an issue. But yeah, that's also super common, so you're not alone in that. Oh, next one's for you. Next question.
Yeah. So this one's coach class strengths and weaknesses as a coach.
Oh shit.
Yeah. So I think the biggest things I'd say is like it helps to when I come and bring a problem to you, if I just like show up and I don't like come prepared with like this is what I'm struggling with, or I like don't have it like prepped in advance to where you can like read and think it over, and I'm just like putting you on the spot, then I feel like those sessions definitely don't deliver as much value. I'd say that's one thing. I'd also say like maybe you're not as like harsh and as much of an asshole as like other coaches that I've worked with to like blatantly like you'll like tell someone, but you'll kind of like still like let them like go down their path, which is probably a good thing, and then they learn. You always like kind of hammer it in, but I've worked with others that are just they'll like be really insistent whenever like they think something's wrong. So that could maybe be a weakness, but I think the biggest thing is just like shedding this perspective, and then also you often get to like the root problem. Like whenever I come to you with a problem, that's rarely the actual problem that ends up getting discussed, and it's almost like always you're like very good at like seeing the symptoms. It's like I remember all the calls with like Dylan, and it's like the things he brought was like never the issue, and like and like it was just like the recurring trend of like he brings a problem and you're like, Dylan, that's not the real problem, like, you know. So like seeing those kind of things, I think you're really strong at that, like identifying where someone's actual problem is.
It's so fun for me too, because I know the feeling when someone nails your problem and you're presenting the wrong problem. Because like when I get coached and I work with coaches, it's like you're back in the classroom and you're like, oh, I just got schooled. And then you've got to like, your ego's doing this little thing where it's like, oh, this is like, this doesn't feel good, but I got to pay attention to listen because there's something in this. But yeah, I hear you. Maybe I could go harder. I don't know. Like the thing that I think about letting people make their own mistakes, like I will let you know my perspective based on my experience, but I'm never going to say like I'm unequivocally correct or right, because I've been wrong. I'm like wrong as much as anyone else is wrong. So I try not to like project my experience too much on the other person to like I think of myself as an advisor rather than a director in that sense. The other thing, I think one weakness that I can point out for myself is that I try not to handhold people, and like lots of people want handholding. So that's been something that I like. People will say, "Can you coach me for accountability?" And I will say, "No, because if you want what you want, then I won't." Like that's going to be your accountability. Like that's going to be the thing. But I know people need that, right? So I'd say like there's give and take between being too harsh and too soft, and I don't think I'll ever quite find it, but we'll see. We'll see. All right, now I get to turn this back around on you. What has made Jake Jorgovan such a great student success story of your coaching? The couple things that Jake does really well is that he is very prepared. So if there's an exercise to do, if there's something to work on, if there's just work to be done, he'll get in and do it and get it done, which is like, sounds pretty obvious, but like people like to intellectualize things rather than actually doing the work. And so if there's an opportunity to prepare, Jake will always take it and he'll always get his stuff in first, which is makes my job easy. Like the more data and the more information I've got to work with, the better I can like center around an answer or some other resources. Jake is very willing to take on feedback and also willing to give feedback, and that's a two-way thing. So if he's not getting what he needs, he's happy to explain it. And him and I have, you know, worked together for a couple of years, so I've been able to like figure out the dynamic of our relationship and learn through each other. So there's been times where Jake's coached me on certain things, especially around like sales and positioning and putting stuff together and actually like promoting things, which has never been a strong suit, but he's willing to provide support and advice in the same way that he's willing to receive it, which is nice. And then finally, just execution. So I see this in the Build Your Product program quite a bit. We'll get through like up until week 4, it's kind of fun. Like you're having a good time, you're feeling really pumped up. And then post that, the work starts. Like the really like get in, you've got to like push, you've got to chase people, you've got to get behind your offer, you've got to do all these sort of things. And when it stops being easy, then people fade out. They get like, oh, you know, I've got other priorities or I'm busy or whatever else. And that's actually the place where it's best to double down and really do the work. And every time there's an opportunity for someone to do that, Jake is always at the front of that, which is like just getting the work done. So not in this way of like just being a workaholic or any of that sort of stuff, but just executing on what his commitments are. And that to me is integrity at some level. So saying that you want something, creating a plan to get there, and then actually executing on that plan. When you miss that last part, that's where entrepreneurs get really frustrated with themselves and they start to blame things that are outside of them, which might be like, oh, this marketing channel is saturated or this offer doesn't work or whatever else. And it's often not that. It's often that they haven't given it enough effort to try and get it across the line. So Jake, I sing your praises. You're the man. Anything to add to that one?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just it really just comes down to like the executing and taking action on it and like doing the work and being prepared. I just think of like the others I've seen, it's just like whenever they just aren't doing the things or like the week comes around and they haven't contacted the customers or something like that, or like tried to get their website together or things like that, or you can tell it's just kind of like halfway done. Like, I feel like those are the people that aren't getting as much out of it. Versus the ones who are just like hustling and like putting the work in. Cause like, this is like the other thing, and like why I just like, as soon as the assignment was like up, I'm always just like, all right, dive in. And like right after the calls, like I dive in, even though like our next call is not for a week, like I dive in those 24 hours, like right after it, because it's like fresh in my mind. And I'm probably going to go through like 4 iterations of like what I just like worked on, like between now and when our next call is. Cause like, the work in this kind of stuff, and anytime you're doing coaching, it's like, it's not just like, oh, have the coaching call, go to do the work. It's like a lot of times the work's like pretty big decisions or like strategic or like thinking through like an offer or like pricing and like things that are kind of like intellectual. And so like you do like gotta like make a version and then you gotta refine it. And then you're like 2 days later, you're like, oh, maybe that's better. So like, I think that that's what helps on jumping into it so quickly, is it gives you more time to like let that all fester in your brain between calls and stuff when you dive into it quickly.
Mm-hmm. Execution, underrated skill set of entrepreneurs. Next question, Dana. All right. Thanks for jumping in, Dana. Do you have any, and by the way, you can jump on off mute if there's anything that you have to add to this, but the question you've got is, do you have any recommendations for when productizing your service is in conflict with providing great results? My business is similar to the lead cookie. In the past year, we've been unproductizing our service due to campaigns we run needing to be more personalized to bring results. Helps to keep our clients happy, but often wreaks havoc on our operations doing so much custom stuff. Oh, that sounds stressful, man. How is that working out? How's that working out for you?
I went from like, yeah, I have a productized service, and I slowly started realizing that I'm unproductizing it as we go, due to a lot of the productizing being kind of like the thing that's annoying so many people on LinkedIn these days. If it's not personal enough, if we're just straight up running campaigns of a sales navigator search that's just automated, then that's not really hitting the mark for most people, and they're getting angry replies from people like, hey, stop spamming me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So we've started to unproductize it, make it more personal and more hands-on, and which helps, but at the same time on the operations side, it's a pain in the ass. I'm wondering if it's just kind of a symptom of our where we're at in the lead gen space right now, of needing things to be more personalized to produce a result, and personalization needing customization to an extent, right?
Mm.
I'm more inclined to keep things personal right now and be a little more stressed about our operations than to just say fuck it and, have our customers be unhappy, but it is kind of a delicate balance that I've been struggling with for the past, I'd say 6 months or so.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Jake, you got anything real quick on the market? I know like you guys are technically competitive, but I'm sure there's like a little bit of something.
Friend competitors.
Yes. I'm experiencing a lot of the same. I'm actually very interested in your answer, Alex, because like I'm experiencing a lot of the same stuff that Dana's doing, and we haven't chatted on this. So
it's like the productized service becomes a Frankenstein agency. Like it slowly becomes an agency. Is that the?
Yeah. I feel like I had a great productized service when not everyone else had a great productized service, and it was such a popular concept. And now that everyone's having this productized service, I feel like I'm getting farther and farther away from that. Not so much by choice, just by kind of what the market is demanding.
Yeah. The unfortunate, maybe the unfortunate reality of this is like markets will shift for sure, because of I think the sophistication of that market, and there's so many alternate options and different ways to get that problem solved. That flexibility is kind of at some level necessary to be competitive. Like the difference between getting a "Dear John, check out my white paper" to "Hi Dana, I like your haircut, I read this article about you, you're such a great guy, love your company, blah blah blah." Like it's significant, and that takes, like, at some level can't be productized. Like it's not really a productized service. So then you ask yourself, like, what business am I in, and what business do I want to be in? And usually when you get to this stage, you're like, well, I'm actually in a business that I don't want to be in anymore. And if I want this business to be successful, I have to continue to build this agency model that I don't want to do. Jake, I think you kind of like walk this path a little bit with Content Allies, like the identification against, like, is this an agency? Is this a productized service? How do we do this consistently? How do we make sure that it's uniform and deliver? But to me, the linchpin is usually the level of customization. So when I talk to people about this, and if they really want to have a scalable team, and this is like getting down to very, very simple stuff, but if you can't get someone off the street to do execution in your service, as in like you're walking down the street, go get a coffee, there's some random person, and you pull them into your business and you're like, this is what you need to execute, and this is what your expected output and productivity is going to be each day, and I can consistently expect that from you, and it's going to be delivered in a profitable way, and it's not going to be like, use your creative skills and go and figure this out and paint your blank canvas. Then you got a big problem, because you are relying on that, like getting deep into looking at the particular customer and all that sort of stuff. And I feel like there's enough opportunities out there to create like massive productized service offerings. And it's just a matter of like figuring out if that's the market, if it's the market you want to be in, and if it's the business that you want to be in. Because I don't see it going backwards. Like I don't see people like getting less sophisticated and being happier with Dear John. And that's like, it's the unfortunate truth, but like that's kind of what people pay me for when I see this stuff, and I'm like, it's not going to go backwards. Like you can look at other edges of things that you can provide to those customers or that market. Maybe there's other ways, like other things you can deliver potentially, but for something as like commoditized as lead gen, the value prop is very centered around how well you convert, and conversion is a function of these days personalization.
Yeah, we've been branching out a little bit and offering, content services, not like Content Allies. I'm not just, following along with what Jake's doing verbatim. But we were offering like content services for LinkedIn, status updates and things like that. And, those things are still very custom as well. So it's not, moving away from our core issue. To clarify though, the issue is less about, because we do have employees where they're, like you said, we could have pulled them off the street and, put them into their role. That part is fairly systemized. It more just comes down to, it's often difficult for us to predict what time commitment will be involved once we actually get in there and start realizing like this is actually the, especially we launched in like 2 weeks, and then, we're getting additional feedback from the clients of like, hey, this is actually really far off from what we're looking for. And from my side of things, I don't know how you feel about this, Jake, but when I'm charging 1,500 plus for, some guy for us to do this, at its essence, fairly basic service, right? I always feel a bit bad to say like, oh, well, hey, nope, we can't do that. It's not part of the offering, when really what they're asking is like, hey, all we want you to do is like target the people that we told you about in the onboarding call. And like, you know what I mean? It gets not easier, but we can let some of these more difficult customers with more difficult campaigns go. But definitely I'm seeing the market skew towards people want this more personal. They want it more, more of a human touch to everything. It's just really difficult to scale humanity.
I'll add just in real quick, and then Alex hop back in. But like the whole reason that I did content analyze was just basically because like looking at everything in like the lead gen market, it's just like Alex said, like it's gonna, like my perspective, I was like, it's just gonna get worse in the coming years, and like harder to have a business in this space and take more and more customization. And it's like, I feel like it's going to force a custom agency. And that's why I was like, how do I just use the skills I have now to build a new product that is stable and not going to be disrupted? I guess that was like my mentality on the content side of why I built the second company in the first place.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm both like bullish, really bullish on LinkedIn as a platform for B2B, and growing less bullish on it as like a platform to provide services on, if that makes sense.
Me too. The thing, so just to throw a couple like curveballs at you, I see this quite a bit with entrepreneurs where they see themselves as a service provider rather than like like a value creator. And what I mean by that is, if you're really good at something, and that is like generating leads or generating appointments, and you think about like that as a skill set that you have, why wouldn't you figure out what service you could fulfill on the back end, as far as like, I don't know, like not necessarily like consulting or something like that, but you've got like what a lot of people struggle with is being able to sell, being able to get people through the front door. You already have that skill set. Like that's something that you're very good at. And Jake, I know that you've written about this with your pal, the negotiator guru. What's that guy's name?
Dan Kelly. Yeah. Negotiator guru. Yeah.
Yeah. Negotiator guru. Right. And so the hybrid model here is there's an offering that you can figure out on the back end of your lead gen, where you can have like you execute. So you think of your team as perhaps like a cost center, like something that is your marketing expense, and then your fulfillment is whatever product that is. And so like this is a different way to look at a productized service model, but instead of seeing just the function that you provide as the business, you use that as part of the business and then drop that into something that you fulfill at the back end. That would be like if I was in your position and I was looking at different ways to use the same resources and workforce and everything else, that would be something I'd be looking at closely, because there's still a ton of benefit to be derived from being talented at doing that. Like if you're really good at it, you're basically printing money. Like you're figuring out how to get customers in the door and you're good at it. So fulfilling something behind that and figuring out like an offer or a niche or whatever else, like to me is one extension out of that, because otherwise like the problem set just gets more complex. Like there's more personalization, there's different tools, different apps, there's different limits on LinkedIn, there's different rules, the application changes, et cetera, et cetera. And so no matter how much you throw at it, it gets more and more difficult. And just to look at this from a meta level and why this is different, like WordPress and LinkedIn, like WordPress is open source. The more plugins, the more stuff that gets thrown into that ecosystem, the more complex it gets. LinkedIn, closed source, it's proprietary. There's no, like, you can't go and build your own plugin or app off the back of that. Like you can build a browser extension, but it'll get shut down pretty quick. And that means it gets like probably more and more efficient. Like they figure out ways to drive more and more efficiencies out of the platform. And so that's a function of really like at the top level, that like the product that you're sitting on top of. And I think people miss that. Like you look at providing a service to them, like on top of a product, and you don't realize that that product is gradually like squeezing you out as a service provider. Whereas something like WordPress, there's legacy, there's people that have never updated their site, there's new versions rolling out, there's all these tools that people put on top of it, and it gets like really messy and convoluted. And that's where the problem set is. Like, that is ever expanding. But with something like a LinkedIn or something else that you're selling on top of it, actually contracts, because this people's jobs are to make it more and more efficient as a product manager, to drive more revenue out of it, to get customers to engage more with it or self-serve more. So just food for thought. Like, there's a lot in there, and maybe, like, I don't know, come back to the recording or something. But if I was looking at it, I'd be like, okay, I've got this skill set. How can I apply it to fulfill something back end to generate potentially a bunch more revenue?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That's kind of been the direction that I've headed. This, all your answers sort of reinforce that, yes, this problem that I'm experiencing is definitely real, and it's probably not going to get better. And also reinforce that, adding, something tangentially related on the back end is what I've been doing, and I'm kind of on the right track.
Yeah, good. All right. Thanks, Dana.
Thanks for the answer. I have a sales call, so I'm going to jump off. Thanks, guys.
See you, man.
Bye.
All right.
Awesome. Next, Tomas, we had a question coming from you. I guess I'm on Content Ally's side of, you describe the process for onboarding and how we kind of do that with the team. And then does one person provide all of the content? So I'll share some stuff here. Alex, this will probably make you happy. As I did, this is actually an article that'll be going up soon on the new customer success basically plan for Content Allies, which I kind of recently just redid. So a common thing that Alex taught me was just like thinking through every step of your customer's experience, from like the sale all the way through like their first 90 days. And like, what does every step of that look like, and how do you make that as intentional as possible? So I literally did this last week. I did this for Lead Cookie, and this is actually I probably did it like 2 or 3 times, because it keeps evolving as you kind of build the service. But this is the most recent iteration. Basically, we close the deal. We send over an expectations page, which aligns expectations. We send over the invoice. We send in LinkedIn access so we can post on their behalf. We send a questionnaire and then a booking widget to schedule their onboarding call. So that happens at the point of sale. Before the onboarding call, we send a pre-call agenda telling them kind of what to expect for the call. And then a questionnaire, like reminder if they haven't filled that out yet. Then we dive into basically our onboarding call. We have a few parts. We first go into logistics. We educate them on how our service works. The second part is we then align on strategy, and kind of we go through all of the things we know about their account already and what they want to achieve. And we go through any questions to get clear on that, of things like the softer questions we talk into about like buyer awareness and like how aware or what are people thinking about in your problems, things that the questionnaire is kind of hard to hit on. We then kind of go into a content brainstorm, which the interesting thing, I guess, to share on all this is like this, we found that like a lot of this information comes in the sales call. So we've started recording the sales call so we can basically populate a deck before the onboarding with a majority of this information. And then we're kind of just building on it in the onboarding, and we're not just asking them to repeat themselves. And so we kind of do this brainstorm, which they come up with, it's ultimately the ideas often come from them, but we have kind of like categories or prompts or ways to get them thinking. And then we spend the last 5 minutes scheduling the actual upcoming calls that we're going to interview them with. Then we basically send over a deck that kind of everything, we clean up that deck, send it over to them so they have that. They get a customer dashboard that shows all of their content ideas, a place where they can submit new ideas and see the status. They get prompts sent over before their first interview. We start an automated drip sequence to kind of educate them on how the service works. And then we basically dive in on that first interview. And so that's kind of the onboarding flow. And to clarify on your other question, we have a strategist for every account who is the one who does the calls with them, they copy edit everything, and then they have a writer who they actually send it to, but the strategist is kind of like the strategic angle, makes sure to think on like the bigger picture, and then they send it to a writer who actually creates the post and sends it to the strategist. So that way we kind of have redundancy and 2 people involved on each account and everything there. So that's the onboarding and kind of overall flow. Any questions or other clarifying thoughts there?
Great. Great. Because, I was thinking also, because my girlfriend is a very good writer, and also I'm turning a little bit from lead generation to more provide content, and I see that many people, whoa, yeah, I want to build my authority. So it's good to separate. I'm more strategist, she's more writer. So it's good start. Thanks. Great value as always. So do you plan a blog post about this?
Yeah, so we do kind of where our service is our core is like the article writing, and then we do create social posts based off of each of those articles. And so we'll kind of create each of those as well. And then we do have some customers that just hire us for LinkedIn content. That's kind of like a starter service if people aren't ready to commit to fuller articles, or they just need that kind of awareness. And we use this tool called Plannable to kind of manage that, which it's like Google Docs, but for social posts, which has been awesome. So yeah, that's kind of the standard flow. And then if we do the LinkedIn content, most of the time we don't need ongoing calls with them, just kind of check-ins every now and then. So
nice. And what do you do if someone wants to modify package? Because not everyone has email list, for example, and I follow all your stuff, so I know also your packages in Content Alliance. So I see that that email, but multiple accounts on LinkedIn and the enterprise package.
Yeah.
So do you modify them, or just say, okay, like cable television, is that in the package? And if you don't use it,
Yeah, so we've definitely adjusted, I think, because I know we spoke a long time ago, and we have gotten rid of the email marketing thing. That was just a pain, especially like just with everyone and their different like email providers. It was awful. So we don't do much of that at all anymore. Just kind of some legacy customers.
Okay.
Again, maybe something we ramp up down the line again, but not in the short term. And so, yeah, we kind of eliminated that. So our packages are really, we do a launch package where someone basically gets three articles. We sell like either they could do 3 long form articles or 6 short form articles is what they get with a launch package. And then we create social posts to accompany each of those. And we really don't do much customization anymore. We've had a few people that have kind of pushed toward it, but it's all still the same thing. But like they want to go for annual plans, or they just want to go like really slow and stuff. So we've done some when people wanted to push out just like a bigger deal. But beyond that, we don't really customize too much anymore. I did a bunch at the start while I was figuring it out. It took me a while to land on it, and selling a launch package that was like a pivotal breakthrough in getting this whole company to work way better. When I tried to sell retainers, it was a pain. It worked for social content, but retainers on articles was a pain because no one would hold up their end of the bargain on like appearing for interviews, reviewing them, and getting them approved. And then you just fall behind schedule, and it was a pain. So we started moving to kind of a consumption-based model, and that was much better for us.
Okay, interesting. And one last thing, and how do you handle this objection that someone said, okay, if your writer know my industry? Because, for example, in Poland, it's very strong that custom software agencies. So I want to focus on this because this is the best money in Poland, and I have that authority there. But they have this objection, okay, if your writer will know anything about tech, about software creation and things like that. So how do you deal with this?
Yeah, so we definitely go from the standpoint of like, we interview subject matter experts and pull that out of your head. So we're not just like writing random articles on topics. Like, we're going to interview you, and like what you say is going to be the guiding piece of it. And then we've just found that like, it definitely is easier to just convert when you've got case studies that are similar. So we've got a lot of IT case studies, and so therefore like we're getting a lot of IT work, and like I just like a lot of the other things, like it's just a barrier that we try to overcome it. But I think the more case studies you get, more reference points, which you can kind of pull some stretch whenever they're there's only so many industries of and if once you get in tech, like most people, you can share that similar complexity. So
great. Thanks. Great as always.
no problem. Awesome.
Thanks, Jake. My internet died, so it jumps back on my phone. So I don't know if there's more questions in the chat, if you can relay them.
Cool. Yeah, no problem. So we have one from Oladapo here on, basically I'll read this one here. So he said, how did you guys get your first 3 to 10 clients? I just launched a productized service, white label WordPress development solution for digital agencies. Launched 4 weeks ago, struggling to get traction. I've had some discovery calls that look likely, but I feel like I should have made more progress. I know I have a good product, but I'm yet to get the marketing channels that work well. Doing LinkedIn prospecting, Facebook groups, subreddits, and cold email. And then he dropped the link here in chat, which I'll pull up here, but I know you're on phone, Alex. So yeah, so I guess getting the first 3 clients, and specifically, I guess, probably have some reference points on this. Yeah, so this is WordPress development for agencies. Good looking website here, starting at $599 per. I don't know if that's per month, or it looks like $9.99 per month. So yeah, Oladapo, can you maybe share a little bit more just on what your offer is, and then we'll kind of maybe give some more insights there. And I think you're muted right now.
Hello, Jake. Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yep.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, yeah. So my service is a WordPress development service for agencies, white label, and so I have like different packages, like different plans. So one of my plans includes an unlimited plan that covers new website development and maintenance tasks for agencies. So that one is like per month, like $1,000 per month. Then I also have other plans for single projects, like for like 2. If you check the pricing page, you will see the one for single projects. But I've been getting feedback that my prices are too low. That I should double my pricing. I've been getting that feedback because some of my friends that are agency owners are saying that the offer might look to some people like it's too good to be true. So that's what I'm thinking about. Like I'm thinking about doubling my prices.
Yeah. Alex, to give you an idea, he's got pricing on here, or you're on, looks like you're back on computer, but
I'm back.
$599 for a site, simple site, $799 for a 10-page site, and then $999 for a dedicated designer/developer per month. So
yeah.
White label WordPress development, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Oh boy. Okay, so I don't know if the WP Curve website still is alive. It might be, it might not be, but there's a blog article that I wrote in 2014. And it's, if you search for like white label failure, WP Curve in Google, it should come up, or you might be able to get it off the Internet Wayback Machine. Effectively, like I couldn't figure out I couldn't figure out a way to make white label development for agencies work. And the long and the short of that was, one, there's a weird thing that happens with trusting your customers to work with another partner. If you're just doing the work behind the scenes as the development shop, then you put yourself in a pretty precarious position, because there's always pressure and deadlines and all these other stuff that you've got to make sure that you take care of, and you're effectively just like a development shop, or like I think the metaphor I use somewhere is the difference between being like a trusted partner and then like the garage where you go to get your car fixed, like kind of like the chop shop. I can't speak to how to make that successful, because I was never personally able to make that successful. It doesn't mean there's not a lot of other people that can make it successful. Like, I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I'm just saying that I don't know how to do it very well, because I couldn't do it. And I spent probably 4 months trying to figure out how to do it. The quick things that I would think of, if you're looking to get off the ground and looking to get the first 3 to 10 customers, what worked for us was going to people that knew us and trusted us, so people within our network. WP Curve was launched within the Dynamite Circle, which is like an online forum for internet entrepreneur people. Dan, my co-founder,
Okay.
he launched a landing page and basically said, "This is what we're doing. Here's a special deal for the first 10 people that sign up." And that was enough to get at least people using the service. None of those people were actually effectively like great customers, because we figured out that our customers were different people over time. But it was enough to get us started. So
Okay.
yeah, going to people that know you and trust you and offering to do work for them. The other thing that we did was do quite a bit of work for free. We partnered with John Lee Dumas. We partnered with Chris Ducker. We partnered with a couple other pretty well-known internet people, and we would do very discounted work for them, or very sometimes free work, to get the kind of like recognition and the association with those guys and have them promoting us and talking about us.
Nice.
Yeah. So
Okay.
it's kind of like doing freebie influencer marketing was probably what I would call it. And those things help to, I would say, like get the ball rolling. So those things are food for thought. I'm not very good with white label. I'm not very good at agency development or development shops. Jake, do you have anything to add to any of that? Is there anything that you can help with?
Yeah,
Thank you, Alex.
I'll drop a link in here, Aldapu. This is to a company called Scale Squad, and these guys are crushing it at white label WordPress. And they actually have their prices and everything publicly on the site, which are higher than yours. So they are charging more. And I know these guys are operating at a massive scale. Like they're doing a ton. And I don't know exactly. Well, actually, I've got I'll try to find the link. I actually interviewed this guy on my podcast, which is how I learned a lot of this stuff. But it's super interesting stuff. One of the things that they're doing now is they have like a Scale My Digital Agency Facebook group. And so they're basically like building a community of agency owners. There's a lot of that going on now. So I think it's harder to make that as effective as it once was, because so many people are trying to target that persona. But I definitely think, especially for your first customers, going to people in your network, going to people you know. I've, as much as like, it's not terrible to see, I've seen people like start things like this off of like Upwork and then like build from there, like which like can be valid. Like there's good stuff there. But I think like cold outreach for this, it's hard just because like web design and like WordPress, it's just like there's just so many spammers that like I just get hit up all the time, and it's like and like you just like, so it's just like you don't even take it like, and so like I just, you know, like getting hit all the time. And so whenever I look for something like this, it's like I'm going to go to who do I recommend and stuff like this. So I would keep putting it out there. Ask people, if you don't have someone who's like a customer in your network, start asking like, hey, do you know anyone who could be a good fit to talk to? You know, and then the other angle, you know, like start some sort of content series where you can interview agency owners, learn their problems, and build relationships that way. That's always a simple way, whether it's podcast or like a written interviews, but content where you interview your target prospects is another really great way to build trust and build some assets at the same time. So.
Oh, that sounds good. That sounds good. I'll take note of that and I'll work on it. I'll work on that. Thank you. I'll
drop this podcast interview with Ryan, who runs Scale Squad, in the chat. So it's a good one. He sent hot sauce bottles to people to win customers. So that's some fun stuff.
That's some inspired outbound creative right there, isn't it, Jay?
I know.
Are there other questions in the chat? Like my chat died. I think Greg has.
Yeah, Greg, looks like you had a question you wanted to ask on voice as well.
Yeah, I can figure out how to type this in a way that makes any sense. So, so I've had this business for 6 years. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool technician. I taught myself to program when I was 12, and you can see these gray hairs. So we build mobile apps. That's what the pitch is, and that, you know, ends up being a complex cloud infrastructure with some sort of web app attached to it. And they're complicated projects, but it's all bespoke. And I want to get out of that game, that racket of just consulting one-off projects. We do have some follow-on work, but for the most part, what they need is pretty well defined and waterfall structure. We deliver it, and we'll hear back from them later, maybe. I've drunk the Kool-Aid here, and but every time I go trying to figure out what's the new starting point for a productized service, I just keep, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail kind of thinking. And then I think, well, I should be able to have like a bridge business model where I do something that tweaks, and so you see why I could not type all that.
I'm in stitches over here because I hear this a lot. Sorry, it's just yeah.
So is the bridge business? That's a single question out of 20 potential field. There is a bridge business model worth thinking about, or is that just really going to be too painful?
I've composed myself. I think I can answer this. Yeah, the hammer nail thing is so apt. Like that is so true. And people, this is the value of community, right? So you'll get people that are technically brilliant at what they do and very good operators or very good executors in a particular narrow field. But like the thing that makes them good is that narrow focus. Like that's what makes them excellent at what they're good at, like being focused. The challenge is like it kills perspective because you can't actually see the forest for the trees and you don't know where or how to apply that skill set in a way that can be like wrapped around something that's recurring or something that's scalable or something that's different or like even going to something adjacent. What I like to start with, and you'll see it in the workbook and the exercises and that kind of stuff, is actually like what you want from the business, like what you want the business to be as far as outcomes are concerned. And then it is at some level, like, I don't know, creative destruction is a bit like, it's a bit fluffy, but what you're looking at is like, I run people through, give me all of your ideas, let's prioritize them. Let's bounce around on them. It might take you a couple of weeks to get something that's got actual legs. Like they might all be horrific ideas. And I've seen some really great ones and I've seen some really bad ones as well. And then running them through a framework that says, okay, this thing is recurring. It excites me. It's scalable. I can't remember the rest of the letters in the acronym. It's an urgent problem. It's one of the exercises. Anyway, we run all these ideas through this framework and you start to see patterns of things of where these models are weak. And that to me is a systematic way of like breaking through these barriers as far as like idea generation go, because if you don't have a process to follow, then it's like, I could do that. And then that like kind of loses its luster. And then you go over, oh, this could be, and then next thing you know, you're just like going from like, you're kind of pinballing around. Happens all the time. I've worked with clients that have struggled with it, especially folks that are technically brilliant. It comes up a lot. But getting that in front of a group of people with completely alternate skill sets helps to, like, you kind of crowdsource creativity. Like you just get in, here's what I'm thinking, here's a concept, and someone will pile on and go, have you thought about that? How about this? What about that angle? And that's surprisingly helpful. And I did that with the first iteration of the program. Like I went through and every week was asking people, okay, this is what I think is going to be useful to you. Tell me what's missing. Tell me what can be better about it. Tell me what you'd like me to go deeper on. And I could like try and guess that, but actually getting it in their words and then reinforcing it and building it back in was the most insightful feedback I got. And it was from other people telling me, this is what I'm seeing from you. These are the other things that might be useful or interesting. And so that's a way or a method to get there. The bridge business, you spend so much time building a bridge that like you can probably just like leap the gap, and that's a sequence thing. So you have your existing business, you run that business, you figure out what you want to productize. In the background, you start to build it. You figure out what your timelines are and what your risk tolerance is, and then over time you can transition to it. I never recommend anyone do what I did, which was to drop yourself in the middle of San Francisco with no income and figure out how to make it work, because that takes years off your life, and increases your blood pressure, messes with your adrenals. Like it's just not a healthy thing to do. Some people like it. Like I'm a bit of a thrill seeker in that way, but I never advise people to do it. But yeah, sequencing is helpful, and like working towards a plan or a goal. People have different timelines. Some people I work with will say, hey, I want to be there in 6 weeks, and that's aggressive, but we can work towards that. Or, hey, I want to be there within 6 months, and this is the structured plan of how I'm going to get there, and the things that need to be kind of like green lit or milestones that I pass to feel like I can transition into the next business. So I like to run parallel. I don't like to bridge, because bridge gets just weird and hybrid and confusing, and then you end up in Frankenstein land.
Yeah, and yeah.
Does that like resonate? Does that click?
It seems like the bridge idea sounds good, and then in practice is stupid. And I'm guessing you have a lot more experience than just a unit of one is all I've got in this brain. And you've talked to a bunch of people. So I guess that pattern is seen out there.
Yeah. It's not uncommon. And it's like, it's a logical thing, right? Because you want to, as an entrepreneur, you want to like kind of forge your own path and be moving forward with something. And an obvious thing to do is to start to like build that connection to the next thing. But by doing that, you muddy the water, because there's no real clear delineation between like what that business is and what's really good about it, and then why you're building the next one and what's going to be different and better about it. You end up in like with this kind of bastardized version of both of those, but then it's like really in between and not really. Like, this is where people like land back in agencies without realizing it. They're like, I want to productize this service. And then they just end up with an agency, and not like another version of an agency, like an agency by any other name. Jake, what you got? Something? I'm sure you got some stuff to weigh in on this, because I know you've walked down this path.
Yeah. So I think I think everybody goes through this. Like anybody, like I think like Bridget, or just like any of like myself. Like I was consulting before Lead Cookie, and it was like, all right, now I'm going to do this, and like I launched this, and then it's like, okay, cool, and then there's like this shift over probably like, I think it was probably about 8 months before I was totally done consulting, and like really wound everything up. And so like, I don't think anybody's like going into the jump. So I don't think you're like alone in that. Most people are doing some sort of agency consulting, and then they're building this, and then like they're just trying to go for a transition over time. And so I think that that's pretty common. And I think like the other biggest thing is that like, that I think was just like a lot of like mental like barriers, I think, to like the stories, or just like what you believe can be done with a business and things like that. Cause I remember one of the like craziest things for me the second time, like when I started Lead Cookie, I like did all the work and stuff at like the early days, and I was like in the weeds of it. And it took me like a year and a half to get out of it. And then with Content Allies, like I've never written a content piece. Like, and that was just like a different mental barrier of just like, oh wait, so I can just like start a business and from day one hire people to execute. And like, so like, that was just like a mental barrier that I would just like, I couldn't even like get my head around when I was at Lead Cookie of like, wait, what? Like, no, I've got to be part of it. So like I think everybody's got that transition period, and there's like probably mental barriers that are blocking you like that are making it harder than it needs to be, which definitely was the case for me. So
I'm chuckling because I still can't code in WordPress. Like I could never do anything in WordPress. I was like an absolute liability in the back end. And I'm sure I tried to do some stuff once or twice and would just trip over my own shoelaces. So like that idea of being able to jump into something and not being the executor or the deliverer, like I didn't have to do that. I just had to be really good at like motivating the team, driving quality, driving response time, thinking about the business partnerships, scale, selling the company. Those things were what I needed to be good at. But there were enough resources, experts, people around to make the actual service delivery work. That's a really useful contrast there, Jake. Thanks for bringing that up, because by you saying that, I realized like I was never actually good at the thing that I was selling.
Yeah. Those two examples are really helpful, because I can see that maybe the ideas I've been thinking about as productized services are too close to home, because that's what I see every day. And maybe I need to purposely, go way far away from what my skill set is, so that because it is a huge mental hurdle, you're right, or barrier. I can just do that real quick.
Yeah.
No,
it's like,
you need to find somebody who can do that all the time, because I don't want to do it more than once.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like kind of what almost the thing with like Dana, where it's like we were talking about with like Dana using his lead gen skills to build a new company. It's like, how can you use the skills you have as like to help as like one component of this new thing that you end up creating? Could be like another angle to look at it, or frame to look at it from too.
Yeah. And the other thing I'll pile on with is like this, like the idea of like the sequencing and the transitioning, like I'm living this right now. So like business coaching is and I talked to someone about this just before I got on the call. This is like the most fun you can have, like the most fun job I've ever had, right? Like it's literally doesn't even feel like work. I'd do it for free if money wasn't a thing, but I need to go and make new mistakes. Now I could like drop business coaching immediately and like launch myself into the next venture, but that's a really big jolt. Like you go from like having some kind of identity and something that you're really good at to nothing and completely unknown. And that's, I think, where you make pretty short-sighted and possibly like bad decisions, because you're playing from a place of like, okay, well, I've got to feel momentum and be moving on something, so I'm just going to take the first opportunity that comes up, or like grab on anything that looks like it's going to be like kind of good. And unfortunately, like some things take time to percolate, they take time to kind of find you or whatever else. And like it's like you kind of graduate into it rather than just being like, I'm just going to like drop this thing and jump into the next. But that's like popular in startup land. Everyone's like burn the boats, or all that sort of stuff. And you can do it, but it's like taxing. It's really hard. It's super hard to do. And like 8 months for Jake, like he was like, I think at one point, like aggressively trying to get to that place, right? Like really pushing and having to like, you're almost like letting, like you're white knuckling all this stuff that you're used to doing and just being like, okay, I can put that over there. And you know what? Like it's still working. It's okay. I can let go of this thing. And that's when I'd start getting the emails. Jake's like, team's running the whole thing. And I'm like, yeah, that's the point. And he's like, the team's running the whole thing. I'm like, yeah, that's the point.
All right. Well, thank you both. That's really helpful to my question. It was great to hang for those other comments too. Thank you.
Right on. Thanks, Greg. So we've got Nick and Tony. Guys, do you have any questions? Is there anything that you want to weigh in with while we're huddled around the call here?
Send them some messages in chat, but I haven't heard back. So
okay.
Speak now, guys, or forever hold your peace.
Jake, can I clarify one thing, because I'm thinking about this. You are selling now, launching plan of content as product, as one-time product, or it's starting product and then it's on monthly basis, how it works? Because I didn't get it in full.
I'll just drop our current sales page. I will just say this is constantly an evolution.
Okay.
But what we're moving toward is selling basically, again, a launch package where we do those, like what I described, the 3 or 6 articles plus all the social content and the initial strategy. That's like an upfront price. And then basically selling like 90, we're calling them 90-day content sprints, basically where they can then buy another 3 or 6 pieces of content. If they want to go faster, they can, but most of our customers are just really slow. And so we're doing 90 days and then it expires at the end of then if they don't use it. So that's where we're at. We're having decent number that finished through the initial piece, convert to the second ones. Probably the biggest challenge we have is actually just getting people to show up for their interviews, which I am doing some coaching with Alex on here soon, as we got some behavioral issues and I might be barking up the wrong tree with my customer base. So this is where I'm at now. Don't say that this is like perfectly this optimized as it could be, because I'm working with Alex here again soon to tackle some problems with this business. So.
I'll also throw in a controversial opinion here, Thomas. And I think like if I can dig into what I hear, like you're looking for maybe some inspiration for what you're doing, or some like, I don't know, some examples. Is that fair to say? Like you're looking for a couple of different ideas or prompts for what you're doing?
Yes. You know, I'm following Jake since, I don't know, March. So it's inspiration for me. Everything what I read in the blog, and I was waiting for everything. And I was one of the first person who jumped on the lead cookie mastermind. So yes, I taking a lot of this and implemented my Polish market.
Yep.
So now, you know, but I'm still thinking, okay, you know, I started lead generation and month after month it's harder. So, okay, I jumped more on the content now.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still looking for a way to productize, and by the case to earning money in Poland, okay, it's pretty okay that I can be in Portugal now, for example,
Mm-hmm.
but it's still a bit stressful, and I'm ready. For example, I launched conference about digital nomads in Poland by myself, only by myself.
Yep.
I went to Thailand with no money 5 years ago. I started, so I have this ability to execution. I have this power, but yeah, it's sometimes hard. For example, generation. Sometimes I didn't deliver results, so also I hate it if I can't deliver results if someone paid me. On the other hand, I checked also because I moved to capital city to Warsaw, and I am still somehow of corporate trainer from LinkedIn because the corporation wants to learn LinkedIn. So also I learned by this, but I found, okay, it's not my ideal day because I also took your course, CEO, consulting to CEO. Okay, this is your course. So also for me, teaching people who hate to be in this room because that's punish for them to learn LinkedIn. For me, okay, it's pretty good money, but it's something what I want to do in my life, not so much. So yeah, kind of. I love. I read all the stuff from you, from Jake, and now I'm looking for tweaking how to make this scalable, how to make that to deliver really results. Because even today, I'm not sure with which podcast idea I choose. Because I know from Jake material that okay, podcast is great. I love this. But I'm not sure if focus, for example, for IT companies, what I'm in Poland, what I'm not, I just sold one workshop to one company. So it's not, I'm not sure if that's a great idea yet.
Okay. Well, what I'll jump in and say is that I think with, especially like using for sure, Jake and my stuff as inspiration, it's very helpful for sure. Like it can be super helpful, but the thing that you're going to be working with is obviously like a geographical constraint. So there's going to be different ways of doing business geographically. And I saw that with having the WordPress premium support products go out across all the different geos and all the different barriers and issues that we had with those different offerings. I would recommend that you are like informed by some of the content, but maybe not completely guided by it because of that kind of constraint of geography. And if you have that ability to execute, but you're not quite finding you're not quite getting the results that you want to get from those offerings, then sometimes that's an opportunity to go back to the drawing board, right? And say, okay, I know that I'm good at standing things up, standing up these projects, standing up these different things that need to be delivered. What are the things that I'm really interested in? What do I want this business to look like? And take a big step back from, the just being very narrow and trying to like hit this thing over and over again if you're not getting the momentum that you want. That's a hard thing for people to do because there's like a sunk cost. You've put time and effort into it. Like you feel there's also that entrepreneurial bent of trying to figure stuff out. So I throw that out there just to say, like, use all of this as kind of information, but effectively, like in your geography, like it's going to be different ways for it to be successful probably, and there's going to be different offerings and people do business very differently. And I've learned that from having team members all over the world, having a manager that was based in Germany who just operated completely different to the US did. So throw that in there for what it's worth.
Yeah, and I'll add some into the mix on that too. Of just, I think one of the things that was just really interesting whenever I started working with you, you were just like, I was asked, like, and I see this actually comes up in the group all the time. It's like, oh, what books should I read, or like what things like that, and like one of your tips and advice, you're just like, hey, like just stop reading so much. Like you've got the answers. And that was just like interesting thing that like, it just like, and I see this so much where, and I did this for years, like thinking, like looking at other people, or I'd look at like Russ with Design Pickle and be like, oh, what secrets does he have? And like, and you get in this mindset and like we don't have secrets. Like none of us who have like done any of this, like have some other secret we've just executed. And like this odd thing is like, I actually hardly consume content anymore. And I'm very intentional on when I do want to consume, but it's like, getting your head out of like all of the content ever for a while and just letting you actually think and like look at the landscape. And just like literally just like don't listen to podcasts, like don't read books, and like don't do that for like a week or two, and like your head will clear and you can actually start to then like look at the whole landscape and like what is the steps forward versus whenever I used to read, like just consume all the time, like what podcasts, like I would just like be like just darting around idea to idea to idea based on whatever I was listening to that day and never actually finishing or executing anything and just going all over the place. So I think there's a negative side to like the information overwhelm as well. And I think that was one of the things, Alex, you pointed out to me early that helped.
Oh yeah, man, it's totally addictive. Like I used to sit on Y Combinator. I get on Y Combinator, and this is like the weirdest habit, but I get on Y Combinator at bedtime, and I'd read like the front page of Y Combinator, and I'd read that shit before I went to bed, and I would wake up at like 2 or 3 in the morning, and my brain would just be firing off like ideas and things and like writing notes and doing all this sort of stuff, and it wasn't actually helpful or conducive, but it kind of feels like work. Like it feels like progress, and the actual progress is at some level like backing your intuition and saying, okay, I know my customer, I know my market, I listen to them closely, this is what they're telling me, this is maybe what they don't know that they want that I'm going to put in front of them, and then I'm just going to kind of go with it and see what happens. And I'll be really honest, like I've had a person that went through the Build Your Product program. Actually, there's been a couple, and they've looked for shortcuts and to be like inspired by someone else, or borrow some kind of like copy or other things from like other people's products. And like someone told me this saying the other day, but like all shortcuts are bad cuts, because you don't actually learn what you need to learn by going through the process yourself and figuring out stuff out yourself. So yeah, it's common because it feels like it's moving you forward, but sometimes it can get you spinning in the same spot. And the goal here is to get you moving forward and getting momentum. So hopefully that helps.
Okay, great.
Cool.
Thank you. Jake, have you sent this new sales letter for Content Alliance?
Oh shoot, I put it in the sorry, I dropped it in the
great.
Okay,
great advice, because I feel that that okay, I will create the course, maybe something. So yeah, it's focus and to trust intuition. It's this time for it, because I'm enough and I have so many good reviews about my workshops, corporate, everything. So it's time to focus and let go.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, thanks guys. Amazing.
You're welcome. Jake, you ready to call this thing?
Yeah, I think that should be good. Tony sent me a thing, said he's good on questions. I haven't heard from Nick, so we'll call that a wrap.
Yeah, right on. And I'll just jump in and say that what I'm going to do, post this call, everyone that's on the recipient list or on the member list of this Calendly invite thing, I'll put the video up on YouTube, and there'll also be a call to action to apply for the course. So if you're actually interested in jumping in and joining the community, I think right now we've got 40 people in the Slack. How many people? 39, including me. So there's past clients, existing clients, folks that, I don't know, just like a good community of people that help each other out. The course and the content is useful for sure. Like it's, like anything else, like you do the work, what you put in, you get out kind of deal. But I think the thing that I've really come to love is like all of the people and the way they help each other out. So yeah, if you are interested in joining the program, there'll be a link in that email. Please apply. I'll read a bit more about your background and your business. And if I have any questions, I'll reach out to you directly. If you have any questions about the program, you can also email Jake. Jake's always pretty happy to, filter and reply and be a helpful human being. But yeah, thank you to everyone that joined and showed up. This is fun.
Awesome. Thank you guys for hopping on.
Thanks, Jake.
All right. See
Cheers,
you guys
guys.
later.
Bye, Jake.